So there we have our dude so far. So let's move on to some skin detail. I'm going to do some broad strokes with skin folds. So I've already gone through and I've done some large skin folds, right? And these are just sort of just like large rippling movements that I wanted across and flaps that I wanted sticking out. But let's go into an area and start to define what the volume is of these. What's the actual shape of these? And for this, I probably want to turn on my reference. And let's see what we got in here. So I'm looking at the skin. The skin looks fairly thin, right? And I like that. Here it looks a little bit thicker, like it's filled with fluid. It reminds me of like a... Do you guys ever have those those little, growing spongy animal toys that you would get in like Cracker Jacks, or like as like a... I don't know if I'm dating myself here, but you drop them in water and they grow to like 100% their size or 200% their size. That's what this skin is reminding me of right now. Totally reminding me of that. All right, so let's go dam standard. Dam standard is great for skin folds because of that shape that you get from it, this sort of shape, right? Slash can be good in the beginning. Yeah, totally. Slash can be good in the beginning, but not at this. I would say not for carving and for skin folds, because the slash brush, you get this shape, right? If you were to stare down that curve, you're getting that V shape rather than this nice arch, which works really well for skin folds. So I go dam standard. And I want to look at the movement, or I want to imagine the movement of the skin. Like, how is this skin deforming, right? I can look at my reference and I can go through and I can follow every line I see there. Orb's crack brush is pretty damn good. But I could see, I could go ahead and mimic all this, but it doesn't really give me an understanding of how things are moving. And honestly, if I look at this guy has next to no, minor skin folds at all. This guy does a bit. This guy definitely does, right? And so does this guy. So I want to think about how it's deforming. He's turning his left neck to right, so I would probably have folds that are moving across in this direction, right? His body, I could see him walking left to right, like as he waddles, he kind of waddles left to right, so I'm going to continue that. That's one direction. And I'm just marking this in. Same thing all the way down the tail, because his whole body is a cylinder, right? The arm is a cylinder. So I would get skin folds coming down this way, skin folds coming across this way, right? And then when I get into connecting points, you have a line that is moving in this direction, and then it's diametrically opposed to this line, right? So what do you get? You have a transitional area, right? So we go coming across here, into here, into here, right? So you end up with these staggered lines coming in to get those folds. Let's go to the back of the arm, right, to the back of the leg, and we're going to go, well, let's go, this would probably run like this, right? Or then, and this would probably wrap around back like that. So we would actually get this, right? So you'll start getting these cracks, or these skin folds that cross over each other. But that's just talking about direction. And also one more little chat about direction. When you're going into micro detail, you hit these areas that are raised and are wide, and you get areas that are your canyons on your surface, right, or your cavities in your surface. And if I were to draw a flow of the skin folds coming across the top here, the way that would look is I would have, let's start out with one just moving into the valley, right? We have another one that's coming across the top. We have another one through here, and then we're hitting the center and we're hitting another valley. So what we have is we have a spreading of whatever pattern we're doing, and this is what you should be thinking about when you're doing micro detail by hand. is that you end up with this spreading of a pattern. It starts very compact, and then as it moves out into a larger area, it becomes wider until it hits valleys, where it compresses again until it hits another peak. And you're going to flow around the contours of your surface. So that's what I'm going to be having in mind while I'm doing this. And I don't typically go through the process of drawing out these patterns beforehand, but you're welcome to go through it in Polypaint and draw out these patterns before you go through and do your fine detail. In future, in the two other characters that we're doing, I'll be spending a lot more time on doing skin detail and demonstrate how to do that, but I wanted to just pass that concept by you. The other thing is, what is the actual pattern that gets laid out, and what's sort of like the universal pattern that gets laid out? Well, it's 3 lines, right, that are staggered. So you're looking at this, you're looking at this, this, and this, right? Depending on what type of creature you're doing, and if you're doing like for your crab manta ray, you won't have any of this, right? You're going to be following just a lot of like the calcium deposit growth that's on the shell. But for anything that has like flexible skin, this is what you're looking at. You're looking at these 3 lines. If you're using, like, say you're doing fish scales or you're doing some sort of scale, these are going to be very straight lines, right? So and they're going to be a lot longer. So as I do this, I would come in and then I would stagger it. Then any skin flexes in multiple directions, right? So you end up getting these creases crossing over each other. So the crease would run something like this, right? The pattern of the crease. So we're going to do the same sort of lines across in this direction. And I'm not so concerned that I'm getting choppy lines right now, because I'm not after these lines. If I'm doing like scales or I'm doing something like that, I want to get these quadrants. That's what's important, because then I'll come in and I'll mask out these areas. And this is not a terribly fast process, right? This is doing scales by hand, and it takes practice to get faster. And I'm just going to imagine those lines are continuing down. We got a couple really small guys in there. And you can be as elaborate as you want with the shape of these scales, but the point is to get the quadrants to determine the size for you, right? Then I would invert that mask. Let's just go over, actually let's go over with the layer brush. And then clear the mask. Right, so that's how one way of doing sort of like crocodile scales or dealing with the patterns of the skin. Now, if it's something more like human skin, or what I'm dealing with is like amphibian skin, instead of those straight lines, we're at 12:20 right now. I got to watch our time. Got about an hour left, and I want to get us into Maya. So, if we're dealing with organic skin. What am I talking about? If you're dealing with more flexible skin like amphibian skin or human skin, that line is going to become more of a squiggly line like this, right? The younger the skin, the fewer lines you'll have, right? The tauter the skin, the fewer lines you'll have, and the straighter they'll be. They won't have this sort of looseness to it. But you get this, and then same thing as you cross over it, and you do shorter strokes. And you vary the strokes more often. And usually the thinner the skin, the more straight these lines are. So does that make sense for you guys to do some skin detail with? I'm going to go through and do just a few passes, mixing and matching some of the things I just showed you. Know that I'll be following sort of the same directional lines that I was showing you when I first started. And I'm just going to straight work for right now. I typically like starting at edges like that or in hard creases because it really helps me get a feel for the skin first. You know, I usually don't start in a blank area. Let's dig those guys in a little bit. Let's see, I'm at 1.48 million polys. Let me go ahead and subdivide up one more so I can get a little bit cleaner lines. And typically, like, I don't know, going through this, I will do like large sweeps and then I'll be like, okay, I want to do a surface noise pass and I'm good. Unless it's something that I know that's going to be like a featured, some sort of featured character or something that's going to be featured on the screen. In which case, I'll go in and do what one of my favorite artists does. His name's Brian Wade. Does a phenomenal job with skin folds and details, pores, and he does it all by hand. And he's so freaking fast. But he's also been doing it for like 35 years. So you're not a big fan of alphas. Say you start off with and then refine a bit by hand. You know, I don't find grace in alphas. You know, I mean, sure, you can get some scan data alpha, and it makes for a good sort of first pass. And I'll do like an alpha pass on this. You know, I'll do like a tileable alpha pass on this. But it's really not. It's not going to be the star of my skin detail. I don't think there's a replacement for doing hand skin detail. And maybe that's a little bit of control freak inside of me, and I don't want to relinquish that control. So I want to do a little bit of this for you guys right now. Yeah, for sure, deadlines, of course. But you say deadlines, and I say practice. Practice builds speed. You know, because this can go pretty quickly if you do practice it. You know, and depending on how fine you get into your skin folds, I should probably be doing a broader stroke right now and not get sucked into areas like that because that's like a vortex for me. I'll just go in there and I'll keep zooming in and zooming in.